I want to welcome you to the Cracking the Physician Code course. The goal of this course is simple. It's to help you accelerate your growth by acquiring more doctor clients. Another name for the course could be How to Get Doctors to Do Business with You. I'm Dr. Vicki Rackner, your host. I leverage my experience as a practicing surgeon, clinical faculty at the University of Washington School of Medicine, and serial entrepreneur to help you take the fastest and most direct path to success in the medical market. I want to congratulate you for your wisdom of targeting doctors. I believe that this is the right place and the right time to mine the treasures in the medical market. And here are some of the best things about working with doctors. It follows Sutton's law. When Willie Sutton was asked, why is it that you rob banks? He said, that's where the money is. And in the financial service industry, the money is in the doctors. According to the US Department of Labor statistics, 9 out of the 10 top earners in the US call themselves doctors. Further, it's a real big market. There's about 800,000 practicing physicians and 200,000 practicing dentists in the US. 9 out of the 10 top earners in the US call themselves doctors, as I just previously mentioned, and about 40% of practicing physicians are age 50 or older. And of course, these are the doctors who have already accumulated assets. Further, even though doctors are pretty smart, they're not pretty smart about building wealth. About half of surveyed doctors say that they're behind in retirement planning, and only half are working with a professional financial advisor. It turns out that doctors who work with the financial professionals are in fact more likely to be prepared. Also, doctors tend to be loyal clients with other high net worth people. Client acquisition is not as big of a problem as client retention. In the medical market, it's just the reverse. The big challenge is overcoming the barrier to entry in the medical market. But once you actually acquire a doctor client, you can pretty much be assured that you are going to have that doctor client for life. Further, doctors gossip sort of like teenage girls. So they like to share great resources. And so your end game is to become the person that doctors talk about in the doctor's dining room and surgeon's lounge. So word of mouth marketing is very effective. It's your highest ROI activity. And we're going to be spending an entire module about how to cultivate this culture of introduction so that doctors are talking about you. Further, doctors have financial pain. They're still worried about falling reimbursement and rising expenses and costly regulatory changes. And this is leading to some bad consequences. According to a recent survey, 42% of physicians said that they are burned out. They are experiencing toxic stress. A lot of these financial problems are contributing to their burnout. And when they were asked, what would you need to turn the burnout around? Making more money, putting more money in their pockets was one of the #1 answers. So physicians' acute financial pain is your business opportunity. So you've got a big market here, you've got a big opportunity here. But when I think about the next step, how do you actually acquire these doctor clients? I'm reminded of a scene from my son's toddler years. So he had a love affair with trucks, and he especially loved the big construction sites. And the truth is that, I might have let him go on these big construction vehicles now and then. Well, one day we came to this huge construction site, and he just pointed his chubby little toddler finger in the direction of the dirt pile, and he said, touch trucks. I said, sweetie, that would be great, except look, there, see the chain link fence all around the construction site, and see the gate with a lock? It says, do not enter. And he thought for a moment and said, take down sign. Well, getting to doctors is sort of like my son getting to those construction trucks. You can see them, you can practically touch doctors, but how do you actually reach them? So I'm here to help you take down the do not enter sign. As Hank Greenberg said so famously, all I want in life is an unfair advantage. And that's what this course is really about, to give you that advantage. We're going to be overcoming the 3 core obstacles that you're going to face as you accelerate your growth in the medical market. The first is, how do you gain access to doctors? Getting to doctors is sort of like going into an elite nightclub. How do you get somebody to open that red velvet curtain so you can actually get access? We're going to talk about that. Your second question is, where do you find a reliable source of leads on an ongoing basis? And we're going to talk about the 3 buckets of leads and how you dip into them. And then we're going to deal with the third and really most critical question, which is, how do you build trust? How does a doctor know that he or she can trust you? So you're going to leave the course with specific ideas about whom to approach, what to say, and how to do it, when to do it, how to engage prospects, and why they need you. So we're going to set out a strategic map. So we'll see where you're going. There's going to be tactical steps for flawless execution. So you're going to take away scripts, templates, and done for you marketing materials with instructions about how you use them. So this is the complete soup to nuts course. Now, I want to offer you an apology in advance. Most participants in the course say that taking this course is sort of like drinking from the fire hose. And I offer you my apology in advance, but here's my thought. I would rather over-deliver than under-deliver. You're going to have access to these recordings for life, and so you can always go and review things. So what I'll try to do is I'll try to tell you sort of the main point, the big picture, and just think of all of the details as details. You don't have to get all of the details now. You can go through and understand things more deeply each time you go through. So as you know, I offer an unconditional money-back guarantee for all of my services. And even the most experienced people in the medical market are, enroll in this course for that little 1% tip, that little idea that's really going to help them get to the next level of productivity. So just know that in all of the stuff that they're getting, there might be pearls that you take advantage of 5 years from now. So don't feel like you've got to master everything. Just take away the thing that you need to hear today and you'll know it. All right, so since we're going to be spending time together, I just thought I'd introduce myself to you. So if my life had a bumper sticker, it would say, "Heal thyself." I was actually in a graduate program when I fainted one day on my way to the bathroom. It turned out that I was bleeding internally, and by the time I got to the operating room, about half of my blood volume was in my pelvis. I was so grateful to wake up that I just knew that I was going to be a doctor and save other people's lives like my own had been saved. And not surprisingly, I became a general surgeon. I went into private practice in Seattle and quickly became a breast surgeon, mostly because I was the first woman surgeon on staff there. And, women with breast cancer want to be treated by women. I've had the privilege of treating tens of thousands of patients, and all I can say is that it has been an honor and a privilege to be trusted with people in that situation. Well, for a number of reasons that I won't go into right now, in 2000, I decided to make a change. From being the person who delivered the medical care to being a consultant who helped doctors and patients collaborate more effectively to get better medical outcomes at a lower cost. And I thought that this was just going to be a slam dunk. I just thought that my new consulting business, which I called Medical Bridges, would quickly replace my surgeon's income. But boy, was I wrong. I struggled and struggled and struggled. I almost completely depleted my savings trying to get this thing going. So I hired coaches, I enrolled in courses. I basically hired the best to get to where I wanted to get to. And I remember over in Europe one day, going over there to speak, I went to plug in my laptop. But as you know, you can't just take your US plugs and plug it in, at least in Italy where I was, because Europe is wired differently than the US. And I thought, man, this is it. I, as a doctor, am wired differently than the people whom I'm trying to influence. And when I wanted to plug the computer in, I needed an adapter. Well, what if I created an adapter? What if I characterized this wiring difference and was able to bridge the gap? That's exactly what I set out to do. And even though what I offered, my core value, was exactly the same, the results were much different. So I've had the honor of speaking on a platform to thousands of people. I've been quoted in national publications and have written lots of books. And I'm not saying this to boast, but rather to make a point. And the point is that this adapter is important. So you're wired like a business person and you're trying to plug into doctors. And the reason that most advisors will not succeed in the medical market is because they do not have this adapter. That's what you're going to learn in the course. All right, well, time went on, then 2008 rolls around. And I hear more and more doctors talking about their financial woes, like talking about maybe needing to file bankruptcy. And I thought that I was the only doctor who was sort of challenged with my money and who had made lots of dumb doctor deals. But what I saw is that I wasn't the only one. And I started really thinking about that. And I started thinking, unless and until doctors have a sound financial foundation, they don't really have a whole lot of choices. And so I thought, well, I'm not the person to give financial advice. I mean, who would want to take financial advice from somebody who has made tons of financial mistakes? But I thought, if I could help good, ethical financial services professionals help doctors build wealth more effectively, then I would be able to continue my work with doctors. And let me just give you a specific example. I got a call from a psychiatrist, actually, who had this idea for a weight loss center. Now, it wasn't just about diet, it was basically about lifestyle reinvention. And it sounded wonderful. I said, this is really great. But oftentimes it takes a while to actually generate revenue. What kind of financial reserves do you have? And she said, financial reserves, I don't know how I'm going to pay next month's mortgage. And I just had to say, it would be irresponsible of me to take you on as a client. You need to get your financial house in order before you go on to the next thing. So what you do is really important. You are going to make a difference in doctors' lives. In fact, you might be the person who helps doctors retire earlier or decide that, yes, I can do it and stay in practice. So my secret sauce, the value that I bring, is characterizing the differences between the world of medicine and the world of business. My core personal mission is helping physicians achieve the personal, professional, and financial goals that attracted them to a career in medicine. So in that sense, our missions align. I want to help you be more successful because I know that when you help doctors build wealth, you are helping them live their dreams. Now, I want to tell you that I've actually got two brands. You know me through the Targeting Doctors brand, where I help professionals sell stuff to doctors. But I also have another parallel brand, Thriving Doctors, in which I work directly with doctors. The reason that this is important for you to know is that I develop content for doctors, and this is all content that you can use. You can show your value to doctors by delivering value. And if you don't like writing or creating your own value, you are welcome to borrow mine. So this course is going to solve the age-old problem. How do you engage doctors who are strangers, inspire them to engage with you, to become a prospect, and then convert them to a client? And we also want to do this in a way that works for you. I'm sort of known for my prescription for health, which is be who you are, know what you know, and do what you need to do. And I want to let you know that I want to help you build the practice in a way that really works for you. I want to help you draw on your strengths and outsource the things that you don't like to do, because this should be fun. You should get excited about going to work every day. Okay, so the overview for the course, there's basically three parts. Part one is really understanding how doctors are wired. So today, we're going to go through the 10 laws of physician engagement. In part two, you're going to learn about the B to D blueprint. Okay, why do I call it that? Well, working with doctors is neither quite B to B nor B to C. It's something all of its own. So I call doing business with doctors the B to D blueprint. I'm a big believer in systems. And so you will get a step-by-step systems overview about how to build a physician-friendly practice. So imagine, for example, you went to see a doctor, and the doctor started out the interview with you by pulling out the prescription pad and writing you a prescription for penicillin. It would sort of be like, whoa, what's going on? That's not the kind of care you want. You want to make sure that the doctor has listened to you, the doctor has gathered all the right information before going on to a diagnosis and treatment plan. Well, that is a system. And so what we're going to do is we're going to talk about the system for how you build the infrastructure of your practice so that you don't just get the first doctor or the fifth doctor, but you get all the doctors that you want to get. So that's the bulk of the course. We will spend one module on each of these 6 steps. And then in the 8th module, what we're going to do is we're going to reverse engineer things so that you will know what to do on a daily, weekly, monthly, quarterly, and annual basis about how to really nurture this system. So let us dive in with the 10 laws of physician engagement. So these are sort of like the laws of gravity. They describe how things work in the medical market. And if you only take away one lesson from this course, it's that doctors are wired differently than you are. So the things that are attractive to you are most likely different than the things that are attractive to doctors. And if you don't believe me, let me give you an example. One of my favorite shows is Shark Tank. As you know, entrepreneurs come into the Shark Tank and pitch the sharks for investment. Well, a couple of years ago, a doctor came onto the Shark Tank to get funding for his company, Syndaver. They sold synthetic cadavers. This is $1 billion market. The doctor had already had millions of dollars in sales. The sharks were all engaged, and I thought this guy was going to get a 5-shark deal. But then the questions started. You know, Mr. Wonderful said, well, tell us about your revenue. Tell us about your profits. And the doctor said on national TV, well, I suppose I could be earning lots of money, but I'll tell you, money isn't really that important to me. What's important to me is making a difference. And with that answer, 4 of the sharks were out. he got a deal with Robert Herjavec that fell apart within a couple of weeks. So what went wrong? Well, the doctor was the seller, the sharks were the buyers, and he was telling the sharks that the thing that's most important to them, revenue and profitability, isn't important to him. All right, now imagine there's another reality show called Surgeon's Lounge. So you go into a room and there's, 5 surgeons sitting in plush leather chairs. You want to do a deal with as many of them as possible. What I observe is a lot of people who try to sell stuff to doctors make exactly the same mistake that doctor made when he entered the Shark Tank. They're not telling the buyer what's important with the buyer. So as you move forward in your business, imagine the world is divided into 2 kinds of people. There are suits, there are people who are wired like business people, and there are white coats. These are the prospects that you're trying to engage and get to be clients. They are different, they're wired differently, and the core difference comes down to their relationship with money. And since this is the heart of your value proposition, this is important for you to understand. So I encourage you to read The Myth of the Rich Doctor, a book that I recently wrote. This is kind of like The Millionaire Next Door. This is my summary of conversations with hundreds of doctors about their relationship with money. So I speak about money sort of as a cultural anthropologist, studies, an ancient population in New Guinea. This will give you some insight about how doctors think about money, and you'll also get little tidbits to use as you market to them. But let me lay out some of the differences between suits and white coats. First of all, everyone wants to be successful. That's a universal human experience. But the metric for success is different. So you, as a suit, your metric for success is primarily the money in your bank account. And I'm here to help you get more money in your bank account more quickly. Now, in order to do that, you've got to provide excellent service. You've got to provide excellent value. However, for doctors, the metric for success is the impact that they've made on patients' lives. So if a doctor went into the doctor's dining room or surgeon's lounge and said, man, oh man, was 2018 a great year for me? Profits were up by 20%. That doctor would be laughed out of the room. That's just not how doctors speak. Now, in normal circumstances, profitability follows service. So if they're making a big impact for a lot of patients, the money normally follows. But that's not what inspires them. That's not what drives them. It's not what excites them. What excites them is making a difference in the lives of their patients, their family, and the community at large. So another difference is the way that they manage resources. So if you come upon a really, really great idea, you want to guard it. You want to have the competitive edge. Doctors, on the other hand, when they get a good idea, the very first thing they want to do is tell all their friends. They want to share great information. It's just part of the culture. So if you're out there delivering a great, yummy treat, like maybe you want to give away a copy of The Myth of the Rich Doctor, then what I can promise you is that doctors are going to want to share it with other doctors. So anytime you give away a yummy treat, you should plan on giving away 5 of them because you want them to share your yummy treat with their friends. On the other hand, as a suit, you really admire innovation. Like if somebody's got the next best thing, like Facebook ads, you're on it. You want to be on the front of innovation. On the other hand, doctors are very resistant to change. They've got their ways of doing things, And it's very, very difficult to get them wedged out of that. So finding the early adopters is important. Now, why are doctors like this? Well, it's to avoid the thalidomide mistakes. During the 60s, thalidomide was thought to be this miracle drug to prevent miscarriages. And unfortunately, we know that the drug did more harm than good. And so doctors want some experience before they actually decide, okay, I'm going to do something new. And in fact, the person who is the most successful at engaging doctors and selling to doctors is a pharmaceutical sales rep. And they know that they've got to expose doctors to a new medication about 7 to 10 times before the doctor changes prescribing patterns. And in fact, the most compelling way that they can do it, convince a doctor to prescribe a new medicine, is to say, well, listen, 4 of the doctors that you know are prescribing this new thing. So doctors tend to do what their friends and colleagues are doing. And if you're offering something new, if you're helping doctors decrease their taxes legally and ethically, you've got to find those early adapters, because not all doctors are going to be open to it. But as you reach a critical mass, as 4 out of 10 doctors are embracing new wealth building paradigms, that's when you really get traction. So just know that if you're in the medical market, you can find both suits and white coats. So, the white coats are the practicing physicians or dentists or pharmacists or nurse anesthetists or physician's assistants. And we'll talk about all of these groups of white coats. But if you really feel like you click better with somebody with a suit mindset, you can find them. The C-suite executives of hospitals and clinics reliably earn 7 figures rather than 6 figures. There are organizations of entrepreneurial physicians. There are physicians who are real estate investors or owners of surgery centers. So basically, whatever you want, you can find in the medical market. Okay, so let's launch into these 10 laws of physician engagement, sort of like the rules of gravity. So I've got a cup of coffee here, and it's in my hands, and I know what happens if I let go. It's going to fall to the ground. In fact, most things that I hold in my hand are going to fall to the ground if they're out of my grasp. Now, there are rare exceptions. If I've got a balloon, it'll go up into the air. But these 10 laws of physician engagement offer you a way of predicting how doctors are going to respond to you. So if you align your actions with the 10 laws, you're most likely to be successful. And this is why these laws are so important. You have this as a one-sheet download, and I would invite you to print this out and keep this near your computer. So let's dig in here. The first law, and this is the golden law, this is the most important one. If you want to conduct business with doctors, conduct yourself as one. So you already know that people want to work with people they know, like, and trust. I will tell you that the rate at which your practice grows is limited by the rate at which you build trust. But as we learn more and more about neuroscience, this is not as much of a mystery anymore. You build trust by activating mirror neurons in the brain. So mirror neurons are just as they sound. If you're watching somebody do something and you can imagine yourself doing it, that's activating the mirror neuron. So the statement, I like you, really means I'm like you. I see part of myself reflected in you. And the good news for you is that as a financial advisor or as somebody who's helping a doctor promote their fiscal health, this is completely mirrored to how a doctor promotes physical health. Think about what you're doing. You are trying to make bets using probability about an uncertain future. Plus, the consequences of your interventions are really important. In 2008, we learned that there are health consequences to having financial stress. So what you do and what doctors do are mirrors of each other. And in fact, maybe what you want to do is go out and buy yourself a doctor's white coat and use it as your prospecting, just as a reminder that you want to conduct yourself as a doctor. Okay, well, what is the secret to a doctor's success? Well, Dr. Francis Peabody said it in 1925. For the secret in the care of the patient is caring for the patient. So the first thing that you're going to need to do is show doctors that you care about them as people. And in this course, you're going to learn how to think and talk like a physician. You're going to learn how to build trust, and you're going to learn how to craft medical metaphors. You're going to learn how to take what doctors do in their world and borrow those things yourself. Okay, law number 2 is that doctors manage their wealth as patients manage their health. So think about the last time you or a loved one had some kind of concern. Maybe there was a funny mole or there was some pain someplace, and you're in the exam chair, in the exam gown, and sort of wondering, oh, is this something serious? Am I going to be okay? And suddenly the doctor walks in, sits down in front of you, and it's sort of like, oh, okay, I'm not alone in this. There's somebody who's seen this before. There's an expert who's going to help me get through this. Okay, so as you think about your doctor prospect, what I want you to do is have an image of your doctor prospect in that exam gown and you in the white coat. Because when doctors think about their money, they behave just like patients. They get scared. They get anxious. They feel out of control because they're outside of their day-to-day experience. So again, we can go to neuroscience and explain what's happening. So anatomically and functionally, there are 3 parts of the human brain. There is the thinking brain, the cerebral cortex, and those are the wiggles and dark purple on the outside of the brain. So the length of our cerebral cortex separates us from all of the other species on this planet. In the middle, in lavender, there's the feeling brain. And now that we watch people make decisions in functional MRIs, what we know is that most people will make decisions with their feeling brains and justify it with their thinking brains. Below the lavender is the reptile brain. So this takes care of the 4 F's of life: feeding, fleeing, fighting, and reproduction. And if you think of a child having a temper tantrum, they're in their reptile brain. Now, these 3 areas of the brain are kind of like the 3 levels of the house. There's the upstairs, the main floor, and there's the basement. And let's say that you wanted to talk to your kid. You were in the upstairs bedroom, the kid was in the basement. You wouldn't just shout down. You would go down to the basement where your child was and have a conversation there. Well, when you want to engage doctors, you want to do the same functional thing. You want to meet doctors where they're at. Now, when doctors are thinking about your care, they're disciplined to stay in their thinking brains. But when they're dealing with money, they are in their feeling brain. They're in the same part of the brain that you're at when you sit in the doctor's office. So the language of the thinking brain are numbers and words. The language of the feeling brain are pictures and stories. So just remember that when you're engaging doctor, emotion drives motion. So what you want to do is speak the language of the emotional brain. You want to tell lots of stories and you want to paint word pictures. The other thing that you're going to learn how to do is use these medical metaphors, which is sort of the bridge between the unfamiliar for doctors and the familiar. So engage the feeling brain by telling stories And here you're going to learn how to craft your signature story, your story about how and why you are working with doctors. You're going to learn how to leverage neuroscience, because now that we know more about how the brain works, why not use that advantage as you're marketing? And you're also going to learn how to inspire doctors to take action, because understanding isn't enough. You want doctors to actually take the next step. Okay, next, doctors believe that they have unique financial needs. The truth is that you could help anyone, but perception is reality. And so what you want to communicate to doctors is that you get them. You have specific understanding of what their challenges are. You've studied them, you get them. All right, next, busy physicians triage and delegate. So you know the triage nurse in the ER. They're the nurse who decides who has the most urgent problem that needs to be seen now. Now, doctors are very, very busy people, and they want to decide what's most important, what needs to get their attention right now. Now, you might imagine that since half of doctors know that they're behind in retirement planning, they would make the smart and prudent decision that they should really spend some time doing it. But let me tell you my own experience. I love my dentist, and every time I went in for my appointment, he said, you've got a pretty big filling in that right lower bicuspid. It looks okay now, but one day we should replace it because these fillings get old and they get cracked, and you could potentially need a root canal if the root gets exposed. And it's sort of like, yeah, okay, next year, next year, next year. But the day that I got a little kernel of popcorn underneath my gum and it set up a micro abscess and I had pain, man, I was in there that day getting that taken care of. This is kind of human nature. Tomorrow is tomorrow. Doctors have huge earning potentials. They say, well, I'm not quite ready for retirement yet, but I'm going to make it up somehow or some way. But there are things that are causing acute financial pain today. And so what you want to do is help doctors with their immediate pain point, so you can earn the privilege about talking what they really need to be paying attention to. So this is kind of like an exercise into how to get kids to eat their vegetables. You know, one way you could do it is just to sneak the vegetables into things that they like. Okay, next law is that doctors behave like tropical fish. They tend to they tend to group together and then move together under the same direction. And one of my participants in the course said, oh, you mean they're like physicians? And this is absolutely true. And doctors demonstrate this behavior for exactly the same reason tropical fish do. It's to avoid predators. Now, you're not the only people who have recognized that the money is in the medical market. So doctors are constantly being preyed upon. And one of the biggest doctors' challenges is deciding whether or not you are the real deal. You're one of them. So I'm just going to show you a little clip of sardines being attacked from above and below. And I want you to watch and see how this group of sardines protects themselves, because this is exactly the behavior that doctors do that make it so hard for you to engage them. So here we go.
Sardines traveling up the coast of South Africa is drawn in by the swarming prey. But the sardines resist the attacks by staying deep and keeping the school together.
Okay, so that's exactly what doctors do. That's the big challenge in reaching them. And you are going to learn how to use that kind of behavior to your advantage so that you can go with that momentum instead of opposing them. So what you want to do is become a trusted insider among targeted groups of physicians. And just let me give you an example about how this might work. So I'm a member of the Seattle Surgical Society, and pretty much every surgeon in Seattle belongs. And we have monthly meetings. They're all exactly the same thing. There's a social hour, then a scientific talk, then dinner, then an after dinner talk. And I will tell you that the bulk of business of surgeons gets conducted among these social hours. One of my buddies talked about signing a contract on a cocktail napkin at an event like this. So what if you were invited to this meeting by one of the delighted doctors who you serve? Maybe you're even the after dinner speaker at something like this. Well, you think, wow, this is just like so great. Why don't I just sign up and become a member? And I will point you to this page. The membership criteria is membership shall be by invitation only. So this is a closed and locked club. And here you're going to learn ways of taking down that do not enter sign so that you can get into these kinds of fishing holes, which is exactly where you want to be. So you're going to learn how to strategically select your prospects. You're going to learn how to get in front of groups of doctors. And most importantly, how to become the go-to guy or gal among these groups of doctors. Next law is that the most influential person in a doctor's life is another doctor. So this is a picture of Dr. John Ryan. He was the chief of surgery where I did my residency. Well respected. You know, if Dr. Ryan said jump, the question would be how high. When John Ryan says you need to see a financial advisor, people do it. Now, I was able to actually get one of my private coaching clients in front of the residents that John Ryan, who's now retired, used to teach. And so John was there introducing my client. And then after the morning meeting, we went out to the cafeteria to grab some coffee. And without being asked, John Ryan takes out his laptop and starts sending notes to his friends all across the country. You need to have this guy in to speak. Nobody asked John to do it. John was just so favorably impressed that his spirit of service of helping other surgeons inspired him to do that. Okay, so you're going to be starting out building relationships. Why not build relationships with these influencers? Even if they don't become your clients, they're going to influence the choices that other doctors make. They can open up the red velvet curtain rope for you. So here you're going to learn how to identify the key physician opinion leaders, how to quickly get your first doctor clients, and how to build a culture of introductions. Next, know that doctors want to work with experts. If God forbid you had a medical concern, you'd probably get on a plane and go and see the leading medical expert in that medical condition. Why? We know that people with lots of experience get better results. Doctors have seen this again and again in clinical studies, and they will just assume that the person, the financial services professional who works with doctors day in and day out is going to get better results than the financial advisor who works with just, one doctor or two doctors. So it's going to be important to plant your flag in the medical market and project expertise. So you're going to learn how to position yourself as the expert. So this is branding. We're going to talk about how to establish an online presence, and we're going to talk about how to offer true financial leadership. Next law is that physicians need repeated exposure to a message before they take action. So when you've got to talk to a doctor 10 times, this is not about you. This is about the doctor, and it can be really frustrating. So let me tell you a medical story. So when I went through medical school in the 1980s, I was taught that ulcers were caused by excess acid. So if you get rid of the acid, you get rid of the ulcer. So that meant that a patient with ulcers either needed to be on lifetime medication or they needed to go in for an operation that cut the nerves to the part of the stomach that secreted acid. Well, around this time, doctors Marshall and Warren said, you know what, we're not so sure that that's right. Maybe ulcers are an infectious disease, kind of like pneumonia. And if you can get rid of the agent that's causing this infection, you can get rid of the ulcer. And they identified a bacteria called Helicobacter pylori. Helicobacter pylori, H. pylori. And they tested it on themselves. So they would drink a slurry of H. pylori. Sure enough, they got ulcers. They took antibiotics and they got rid of it. Well, you might imagine that the whole medical culture would be thrilled. Like now, instead of subjecting patients to lifelong medication or an operation, you could just offer them 10 days of antibiotics and get the same outcome. But no, the doctors resisted. Marshall and Warren just kept on going to meetings and presenting them. They kept on escalating how dramatic the presentations were. And the bottom line is that this is now the standard of care for treatment of peptic ulcer disease. And they won the Nobel Prize in Physiology for it 25 years later. So if you've got a new idea for doctors, and especially if it involves a little risk, know that you are going to meet resistance. And the point is just keep going. You want to find your doctor evangelists who are going to help bring this message to the market. And eventually your message is going to become the new standard, if you will, just like treatment of ulcers with antibiotics has become the new standard of care. But it also means that you need to stay in regular contact. So here you're going to learn how to build a list of prospects, how to stay in contact, and specifically how to leverage technology. Okay, next, doctors like boxes. So I was speaking to the top insurance salesperson. Actually, in the region, I said, what's your secret for success? He said, I'll tell you. I used to sit in the doctor's cafeteria, and I used to have this one-page form. And for a doctor to enroll, all they needed to do was sign boxes. I just kept it really simple because doctors like boxes. The reality is that there is a broad complexity to what you're doing, to wealth building. And doctors have a hard time dealing with this complexity. You can be the person who cuts through the complexity and makes it really simple. I mean, the sign of somebody who is a true master is somebody who can explain something to a third grader. So how can you tell doctors a simple message that they need to hear and then just let them ask questions as they will? A big mistake that I see a lot of people make when they try to sell things to doctors is what I call making the suture mistake. You know, when I used to talk with my patients about the operation that I proposed, I'd tell them the things that they needed to know. I'd tell them where the incision would be. I'd tell them, what I would do in a very broad sense. Well, I'm going to take out the tumor and I'm going to take out 2 lymph nodes. I'd tell them what they should expect from the recovery, but I didn't tell them the details. I didn't tell them what kind of suture material I was going to use. That's important to me, but that's not what was important to patients. So what do your doctor prospects and clients need to know? How can you really make this message simple? One of the best business books I've ever read is called The One Thing. And what is the one thing that you need to communicate to doctors to inspire them to take action? All right, and the 10th law here, we talked about all of the ways that doctors are different, than suits. But the 10th law is that doctors are people. They put their pants on one leg at a time. They love their children. They want to make a difference just like everybody else. So once you use this adapter and actually engage doctors, they're just like any other client. Really, the problem here is how do you plug into them? How do you gain access to them, and how do you get them to trust you? Once you've gone beyond that, things work well. So please know that doctors need you. You are going to make a difference in their lives. And I will tell you that as I work with my private coaching clients, if they're struggling with something, we can pull out these 10 laws and we can identify which law is being violated. When they align their actions, when they make a tweak and their behavior is aligned with these 10 laws, they get different outcomes. So I will tell you that the entire course is at the Academy of Physician Engagement. You should have already gotten your login credentials. So you need an email and a password. Once you put the password in for the first time, it will remember you as long as you're on that computer. There's lots of resources there, so don't feel like you've got to go through the whole thing. So on the second tab from the left is the Cracking the Physician Code course. And as you go to any individual module, you will find a PDF of the slides, a video replay of the session, and any handouts. Like the handout for this is going to include that one sheet for the 10 laws of physician engagement. So you're always welcome to go back and download it. Before each session, I will be sending a note out to you to send you the PDF of the slides and also a replay of the previous session, but they're all going to be on the Academy. You will also there find a workbook that goes along with the course. And so if you prefer to read, you might just want to read through this. But everything that's in the workbook, I'm going to talk about in the sessions. So I've been helping financial advisors for about a decade now. And, people come to me because they've tried working with doctors, they've tried stuff that hasn't worked, they get frustrated. And, I have come to believe that the most overlooked barrier to success in the medical market are the thoughts between your ears. And, why is that? Why do people have such a hard time with doctors? And the truth is that ever since you were a child, you were taught how to behave in front of doctors. And it's kind of hard to break through that traditional training and work with doctors in new ways. And these unexamined beliefs about working with doctors have a tendency to play them out in real life. So I just want to proactively talk about some of the reasons people tell me they've been unsuccessful with doctors. One is you just can't reach doctors. And my response is that you can, you just need to know how. And this course is intended to show you those systems. Next is doctors are a pain to work with. And my response is, yes, they can be. And the reality is that the skills and temperament traits that make physicians good doctors, the kind of doctors that you want to be with, are the exact same traits that make them challenging patients. Like it might be frustrating to have to reschedule a meeting with the doctor 2 or 3 times. But if you're that person in the cath lab the doctor is seeing and has to cancel other things, you're grateful for it. It always strikes me that we all have gifts and we all have liabilities, and they're usually the flip side of the same coin. So I remember my parenting educator talking to a very frustrated mom about her kid who was just so single-minded that, it was frustrating to be a parent. I remember the parenting educator just looking at this mom and saying, well, Isn't this kind of good? I mean, this is the person who's going to be negotiating your nursing home contract. So my own thought is that life is just too short. If you find that there are groups of people you don't like to work with, there's plenty of other people. Just go on to the next. Groups of doctors have certain temperament traits. You're going to click with some, you're not going to click with others. Find the ones that you click with. Next, I can't get doctors to take action. And I hear you. I hear you. It can be really, really frustrating. And, doctors are going to act on their time scale, not yours. And so what you have control over is whether you're regularly filling the pipeline with prospects. And you know what? Once you've got enough prospects in there, it doesn't matter how long people take to convert. There are people who have been on my list for 6, 7 years before they ever sign up for a course or engage me in a professional way. So just be patient. Don't get too invested in any one doctor relationship. This is a numbers game. And so let's just focus on the big picture. How many people are entering your sales funnels? Next, you've got to wine and dine doctors, and after you spend lots of money, they still may not be your client. And I will promise you that I will deal as responsibly with your marketing dollars as I do with my own. I am all about the high ROI campaigns. I'm going to show you what's actually worked. Every single thing that I am showing you, I have tested and it is proven. Now, there are some things that really are worth the big investment because it pays off in the end. So I'm never afraid to invest marketing dollars, but I just want to make sure that I see a return on those dollars. Okay, so here is your homework for the week. So action step number 1 is to understand your why. There's a reason that you're in this medical market, that you want to help doctors. What is it? Is it because of the financial opportunities? Is it because doctors made a difference in your life? Is it that you see doctors suffering? Is it that you thought that you wanted to be a doctor yourself, but then life got in the way? So having this clarity about what's your why is important, because this is going to be the foundation of your signature story, your story you tell doctors about how and why you're working there. So that's your first homework assignment. Your second homework assignment is to think about what success looks like for you. So imagine, you're 5 years from now and you have the practice of your dreams. What does that look like for you? What are you doing? What kinds of doctors are you working with? What kinds of things are you doing with the family? I had one woman enroll in the course, and she and her husband were really successful with doctors. And so I asked her, why take the course? And she said, well, I've always had this image in my mind. I would love to take my family to the Dolomites for Christmas. And sure enough, she made it there. So Olympic athletes mentally rehearse success. They see themselves on the podium. Where do you see yourself? And I want you to paint that picture in your brain and make it a multi-sensory experience. What are you seeing? What are you smelling? Make that so real because it's going to help you get there. And then action step number 3 is to describe your ideal medical encounters. So if you had the doctor of your dreams, what would that encounter look like? If you called up to make an appointment, what would the receptionist say to you? What would the waiting room be like? How would you register? What would the doctor say when you first walked in? And there's a reason that I'm asking you to do this. And that's it. Remember, I talked about how what you do mirrors what doctors do. And if you can identify the things that are important for you, your ideal doctor prospects are probably going to value those things too. And so once you describe that encounter, this is the template of the ideal encounter with your doctor prospects and clients. And then action step number 4 is just, what are your beliefs about working with physicians? You know, do you have ideas that you just can't reach doctors? Do you have ideas that doctors don't want to make a change? This may or may not be true, but once you actually get it out of your head and onto paper, that gives you the opportunity to challenge that. So I want to thank you so much for your commitment to this course and to your commitment with doctors. I'm looking forward to supporting your success. Now, I've scheduled an hour and a half for these sessions because this course is a combination of didactic materials. So I'm going to share with you what I know. I'm going to share these little pearls of wisdom and tricks and tools. But I'd also like to help you put these tips and tools into action. So for example, the first step of the B2D blueprint that we'll talk about next week is how to choose the doctors with whom you will work. And I'll give you some criteria. You'll go and think about it, but then we'll do some live coaching. You know, I can help you sort of figure out what I think would be the best fit for you based on what I know from you. And so this is going to be a group coaching session also. And, you know, even if you don't ask any questions, a lot of course participants say that part of the main value that they got was just listening to the questions of others. So I've set aside an hour and a half. We won't necessarily use the entire hour and a half, but it's there if you'd like to. I'd also like to ask you to respect other people's privacy. You know, what goes on in Vegas stays in Vegas, and what goes on in this course hopefully will stay here. You know, being able to trust each other is going to help us, you know, have the kind of openness and frankness that's really going to help you get the most out of this course. So let me unmute you again and see if anyone has any closing comments here before we say our au revoirs. So you are unmuted.
Appreciate it very much, Dr. Vicki. It was really informative.
I like the review that we're going from your perspective and understanding better and better. In my opinion, we shouldn't read your book. We should study it and read it probably 5, 6, 7, 8, maybe 10 times.
Right, right. The other thing that's important is that any staff member that you have, I would really encourage them to invest the hour to go over these 10 laws of physician engagement. I mean, having everybody understand this is going to support your success, because this is a team effort. You know, if the person who answers your phone offends a doctor in some way, you could have just lost a sale.
Got it.
So this stuff is important.
Working on it, Dr. Vicki.
All right. Terrific.
We really enjoyed your conversation, your presentation. And when is the next time we're going to have this training?
We're on for Mondays and Thursdays. So you use the exact same login every time. It's going to be the exact same time. It's from 9 to 10:30 Pacific. So it's going to be for the next 4 weeks. Now, we've got a little catch. The 4th of July is on a Thursday. I'm happy to meet on the 4th of July, but I'm also interested in running a democracy. So if the group decides that they want to shift that, I'm happy to do it. And I'll send out a little survey once the course really kicks off so that we as a group can decide how we want to handle the 4th.
I like that democracy.
Okay.
Thank you, doctor. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Okay. Well, listen, go and do your homework. We're gonna start Thursday with your homework. We're gonna talk about that. And if you have any questions, if you have any technical issues with accessing any of the material, just drop us a line. We're here to make this whole thing work for you. So thank you again, and we will see you on Thursday. Bye-bye, all.
Thank you. Bye, all. Thank you.